The movie 7 Years in Tibet is more about the journey of Heinrich Harrer, who is an Austrian mountaineer who lands up in Lhasa unplanned and experiences the Chinese invasion in Tibet. Heinrich, at the beginning of the movie, leaves his pregnant wife in Austria to summit Nanga Parbat, which we later know he didn't want to become a father, so he wanted to escape the birth of his child. The timeline is around 1939, where World War II begins and the expedition team gets arrested by British authorities and are imprisoned in Dehradun. Harrer does escape the prison in 1944 with his friend Peter, and they manage to travel in disguise to the capital city of Lhasa. They are kept as house guests of Tibetan diplomat Kungo Tsarong, and a Tibetan senior officer Ngawang Jimmy gifts them with custom-made western suits made by lady tailor Pemalaki. Both Heinrich and Peter try to woo Pemalaki, who chooses Peter to be with. Heinrich tries to be in touch with his son in Austria but gets disappointed when his son doesn't want to communicate with him. Meanwhile, he is invited to Potala Palace by Dalai Lama, where he gets requested to build a movie hall at the palace. After building the movie hall, he goes on to become Dalai Lama's tutor in Western culture. During his time in Potala's palace, the Chinese invasion starts to take place, and the Chinese army succeed to win the Battle of Chamdo, which was supposed to be the fortress of Lhasa. The Chinese occupied Tibet, and during the enthronement ceremony of Dalai Lama as the spiritual and temporal leader, Heinrich requests Dalai Lama to flee after the enthronement, which Dalai Lama refuses to do so. Harrer returns to Austria and mends his relationship with his son as they are seen climbing a mountain at the end of the movie. The movie is based on the book with the same name, authored by Heinrich Harrer himself and directed by Jean-Jacques Annaud. It shows at the beginning of the journey how Heinrich Harrer was a young, naive, and a selfish man, which showed when he leaves his wife pregnant to escape responsibilities as a father. At the start, he doesn't have a friendly relationship with Peter, which continues until they reach Tibet. He does start to change when Peter confronts him about Heinrich tricking him in selling his watch when he had 3 watches to himself. Heinrich appears to show no remorse at first, but later gives him a meaningful apology by handing over his watches. They do get along well after that and become best of friends. The wooing scene also showed Peter to be mild and introverted, which Pemalaki liked, in contrast to Harrer, who was aggressive and a show-off. Until he does realize he has lost the game of wooing to Peter. Later, he accepts his fate and is happy for Peter and Pema, who gets married. Becoming the tutor of Dalai Lama, he also grows spiritually and learns the way of Tibetan. The Dalai Lama also helps him to realize at the end he has to mend his relationship with his son, as internally he is longing for that. The movie also shows the history how Tibet was occupied by Chinese, which was somehow with the help of Ngawang Jimmy, who was the commander of the Tibetan army at the border town of Chamdo, where he easily surrenders and blows up the Tibetan ammunition dump in Chamdo. Later, Kungo Tsarong tells Harrer Tibetan guerrillas could have held the mountain passes for months or even years, long enough to appeal to other nations for help. The Dalai Lama in the movie is all about compassion and wisdom, where in one scene he tells Harrer not to worry, because if a problem is fixable, why to worry? And if it is not, then there is no use of worrying. He also convinces Harrer to return to Austria so he can fix his relationship with his son. The movie also shows how Dalai Lama at such a young age was curious about the world and wanting to learn everything about it. He also had to face the Chinese occupation of Tibet, which he tells the Chinese general that they will always follow non-violence no matter what. The movie was nominated for Golden Globes in category of Best Original Score. Brad Pitt was young at the time and I liked his performance with his Austrian accent. The scenes were amazing with the stillness and the empty valleys, which does show the way of Tibetan culture. Although it was weird to see most of the Tibetans could speak English, the audience can understand why it is so. The movie is one of the films to be watched if you are interested in history of Tibet and Dalai Lama.